Hey guys, welcome back to the Cult of Film. I am back with brother Noah, and today we're reviewing what I think is a truly underrated and underappreciated gem of not only 90s cinema, which, the 90s was in a lot of ways a 70s revival that took a lot of chances. I think because of people like Quentin Tarantino really blazed a trail. But today's film in particular, while it is rarely reviewed or poorly reviewed, I think really deserves a critical reevaluation. And that is 1998's Belly, directed by the great Hype Williams, sadly, I think his only feature film.
That's right.
Yeah, and written by Hype Williams, NAS, who also stars, Anthony Bodden, and yeah, this is a really fun movie. It is one of the most aesthetic films I think of the 90s that I can think of. It really captures the beauty of 90s hip hop, of gritty crime dramas. Both Nas and DMX, I think, in this film really knock it out of the park. They're playing elevated versions of themselves, and the cinematography, the composition is really beautiful from the opening. And yeah, man, what did you think? I know that you weren't as familiar with this film. What were your thoughts, Noah?
Yeah, I wasn't as familiar, but it was good. I mean, it was action-packed. The visuals were insane. It kind of felt like a music video the whole way through, which I liked. I mean, and Hype Williams, like you said, is his only film. He's known for, those that don't know, he's known for music, music videos, most, yeah. Right? And did a little research on him, and he's, really talented dude. And I thought the high point of the whole thing was, the visuals. I would say I saw a lot of criticism, Kyle, on this movie.
Oh, yeah.
The negative criticism, but a lot of it I don't agree with. And I think the positive, but I do agree with a lot of the positive, which is usually stating that the music is the high point and the plot is less of the high point. But I thought the plot was good too, man. I don't know. A lot of action, and like you said, Nas, DMX acting debuts, they did good. I at first thought Nas was better, but then DMX started to really shine through to, once we got to the end and he had that little turnaround after jail, and I thought it was good. Yeah, those are my initial feelings.
Yeah, man. It's I remember it really dividing people. Again, it took me a really long time to get around to watching this movie, but I remember when it came out, it being really beloved by people who were deeply into hip hop, people who were really into gangsta rap. This is in the aftermath of, Tupac and Biggie being lost, which was 97. So this was a year later that this movie dropped. So it almost feels like the artistic height of the 90s sort of hip hop aesthetic. And like you said, I think what people don't, I think, understand about this film is, one, there's the snobbery and, maybe sort of covert racism of it being a Black director who only had directed hip hop videos up until this point, being dismissed that, he couldn't really be a director. And I think that's completely, anyone who watches this movie with an open mind, the framing, the composition, the lighting, the filter,
colors,
the use of color, man. That's one thing that something I learned from both this movie and the HBO TV series Insecure that was created by Issa Rae that ran for 4 seasons. Two things came up for both of these productions, that when you have Black people in production, in crew, behind the camera, there is a better lighting for Black skin tones and for Black people overall than if you have non-blacks looking through the camera at black people.
Yeah.
And if you watch, if you look at Belly and you look at any episode of Insecure, which is, that show is an accomplishment. That show is just, I love that show to death.
I got to see it. I haven't even heard of that.
It's so good. It's so good. And it uses, like Belly, it uses a lot of music. Like the soundtrack to every episode of Insecure is as important as the writing, as the visuals. But what both of those productions really do well is, I think it's some of the most beautifully captured, what I guess you could call black aesthetics. And I'm not saying that black aesthetics in film are limited to these two productions, because they're definitely not. But there is such care taken to aesthetics in this film that everyone, whether it's a beautiful woman or it's an ugly gangster, it has a beauty about them. How the way they're framed, the way they're shot, the way they're lit. And to me, I don't know how you don't put this on and you have the opening, not to spoil it for people, but the opening scene with Nas, who plays Sincere, and DMX, who plays Tommy Buns. You know, they're entering a club, and it's sort of like blue lighting, but then they're lit by a black light, so their eyes are glowing, and any of the white on the shirts and the clothes is popping. It's an a cappella version of Soul to Soul's Back to Reality playing, and it's like this haunting, slow motion, beautiful visual as they make their way through the club. And, you know, and then shit pops off. But it's one of the best openings I've ever seen to a movie. And so when people either write off or dismiss this film, I'm like, that is true craft, true talent, true skill on the part of Hype and his cinematographer to open the movie that way. And then every scene, from whether it's DMX with his girlfriend, or it's Sincere with his wife, or it's the scenes in Jamaica with that one drug lord, or it's things going down in the Bronx, or stuff going on with the feds. Every frame seemed incredibly well thought through. And to me, this is a knocked it out of the park directorial debut. And the fact that they dragged Hype Williams as hard as they did, it hurts me, because I think this is a really beautiful film. It's a great example of, one, a crime drama. It's a beautiful example of an aesthetic film. It's a beautiful example of hip hop oriented film from the age. I think it's beautifully done along a whole bunch of genre, and it deserves better than it gets. And I hope more people see this movie. And I was happy that you were willing to watch it and received it as well as you did.
Yeah, no, I did. I feel like it received it well. And I was really glad that you said I should watch it, you know, so we can do the film review, man. Yeah, and let's highlight also the women actresses in the film. I mean, what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, Terrell Hicks, who is, I think she's gorgeous. She plays DMX's girlfriend. And then you have T-Boz from TLC. And she actually, both of them, incredibly strong. And I had never seen, not to say that T-Boz was better than Terrell Hicks, but the levels to T-Boz's performance as, you know, a concerned wife, a concerned mother, really, she's a really good actress. And I'm really, again, I'm bummed that Hype Williams didn't turn around and direct more features. I don't know if it was maybe it was a response, again, in the 90s, you know, you get enough bad reviews and it kind of closes doors. So maybe, you know, maybe that closed the door on his directing more, but there isn't a weak link in the cast either, you know, and the women absolutely hold their own.
Amazing.
They're as compelling to watch as any of the men are. And it's just, there isn't much. I mean, you can hit pause in almost any frame of this film and it looks like it should be a poster or a painting.
Or painting, for sure. I agree with that 100%. And I think part of there's a little underlining meaning in this movie too. There might be a few of them.
I think there's
but
plenty.
I think, yeah, I think one of them, Brother Kyle, is that you can come back from things and you can like redeem yourself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not to be like, you know, corny or bland, but I do think that was part of the underlying message, as well as like we're talking about with like Black woman excellence and things of that nature.
Well, yeah, there's definitely, I love there is to T-Boz and Terrell Hicks's characters, you know, while you know, Terrell Hicks, you know, she's scantily clad in a lot of the movie. The opening scenes for both Terrell and DMX are, you know, pretty hot and heavy. There's a lot of nudity and there's a lot of violence in this movie. So if you have a problem with that, get over it. But there is at no point with either of the female characters do I feel like they're being put down. In fact, I feel like the most level-headed and regal characters really in the movie. It's the arc of the narrative is with DMX, who plays Tommy, and Nas, who is Sincere, and these guys, you know, they're mid-level gangsters, I guess you would say, mid-level gangsters, and that's established very early on from the opening scene. You know, these guys are selling drugs or selling guns. You know, they're not on the straight path in life really at all, but they're kind of doing well, and then they start to climb within, you know, that world, start to make connections with some of these drug lords out of, I believe it was Jamaica, you know, and these other guys, and it just keeps building and building and building. But you're absolutely right when you say that there's levels of meaning, and one of the messages of this film is that there is such a thing as redemption. There is such a thing as absolution, and we see these arcs for these guys, you know, and at some point it kind of seems like, oh, you know, like if you've never seen this movie, it's like, I don't know how you come back from this, but I think it's I love a redemption tale. I mean, for as much as I love an anti-hero, as much as I love a badass and a gangster, and these guys do it well. And I would say DMX really does it well.
Yeah, he does it really well. I mean, he basically just embellishes himself and plays it up, kind of, right? Yeah,
no, he really, and it's absolutely believable, you know, because he's, you know, his persona as a musical act, you know, is, I mean, it's pretty aggressive, pretty alpha. And so there's no adjustment period where I have to wonder, do I believe that DMX is really living this life? Not at all. And it works. But I do like the arc for the characters. I do like where it ends up, and I feel if this exact same movie had been made by and it had been made by a director that wasn't maybe exclusively known for hip hop videos, I feel like it might have, maybe it would have been different. Maybe if it hadn't been. And I can't imagine this movie without DMX and Nas. You know, it wouldn't be, Belly wouldn't be Belly, I think, if you hadn't had those two guys on it. It wouldn't be Belly if it wasn't Hype Williams directing. But I can't help but wonder if, again, in the environment of the late 90s, where newspapers and magazines and things like, you know, Siskel and Ebert still had tremendous power as critics, and with one negative review, now every reviewer after is going to just fall in line and tell you that, oh yeah, this is, you know, this is sophomoric, or this is not worth watching, because it absolutely is. And if for nothing else, well, here's the thing, it had a budget of $3 million. It made 9.6. So it made 3 times what it cost, which, you know, that's largely, I'm sure, a result of the respective audiences that Nas and DMX have.
And that's just box office too, I think.
Right, and here's the thing. Again, we've talked about this before. I get so annoyed where it says box office 9.6. Is that domestic box office? Does that include international box office? Does that include DVD sales? You know, it doesn't. these sites need to get way better at,
for real,
because you'll hear, I'll hear, you read the trades and you read about films, and studios can be disappointed with maybe the amount of money that a film makes, but sometimes they're only disappointed at maybe domestic box office. Maybe it did better in Europe, maybe it did better in Asia, and then there's films that, like you and I have discussed, that were really panned while they were in the theaters and then have this massive resurgence through rentals. At least when we used to rent movies at Blockbuster. And this I remember seeing this at Blockbuster when I was younger. And it wasn't something that I'd rent until years later. But yeah, so I have a real bone to pick with the criticism of this film. Like, for example, I think it only has, when I first watched this film, man, I think it was 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's now up to like 23%.
That's still
incredibly low.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's people going in with, okay, how good can a movie be starring rappers? That's what I think it really is. Like, I mean, some of it could be just a dismissal of it, because of it being, you could say, oh, it's a product of its time. It's like, yeah, but you haven't watched it. Like, I'll watch anything. I've gone in and I've watched films that I've heard people say were schlock, and I'm just like, yeah. I was like, okay, maybe the story wasn't great, but it was beautifully shot. It was really well composed. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. I was satisfied. And again, maybe the narrative isn't super. Well, see, I would disagree with that too. I know that there's people that, in these criticisms and these reviews talk about the narrative, and it's
like the plot, you mean?
Yeah, the plot. I don't think the plot is weak either. I really don't. I mean, I think for feature film directing debut, for acting debuts, for DMX and Nas, I think they knocked it out of the park. Certainly these ladies were excellent. I don't know what else people would want of this film. I think it's a real gem. It's again.
I think so too. I mean, the real criticism, like the main criticism, is actually the acting. A lot of people just think that it was really bad acting on Nas's part and this and that. But you really those are people that don't understand. I think if you put this film in the theaters today, like, kids of this generation would watch the hell out of this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All the guns and the shooting and the gang life and all that. I mean,
But not even that, because there's a lot of movies that do that. But it's what makes it is the beautiful, again, cinematography. Like there are that opening scene where they're making their way through the club, and they find their arms. And start things pop off. It's still so beautifully directed that while we're sitting and watching this movie and we're watching these scenes of tremendous violence, it's beautifully done. There's not that excuse me, not that we are in any way advocating violence, but as far as, I would put this firmly in classics of gangster films. Like, this is up there with Scarface. This is up there, this should be in the same conversations as Scarface, Godfather, of a lot of the Humphrey Bogart noir gangster films from the 30s and 40s. I think this film really does hold its own. And I think if people were a little bit more, if they were going into it, not allowing the reviews or previous reviews to dictate their choices, and just watch it. Because it kept popping up on all the streamers that I watch. I'm like, okay, there must be something to this. And one other thing that really caught me is, if you look at the poster for the film, there's two posters. One, people see it's DMX and Nas in white suits against a white background. So all you see are their hands, their black ties, and their heads. And then there's another one that's it's all black. So you have them in black suits on a black background, and again, all you can see are their hands, their faces.
Yeah.
To take that level of care to even the aesthetics of your movie posters.
Yeah.
I really think that people are really, really missing the beauty and just the well done overall production that is Belly. This movie absolutely, and I'll go to the mat on this one. This movie deserves a critical reevaluation. And I think you're right. That I think that if I really want to show this movie to my nephews, in fact, I think I might.
You should.
You know, yeah. The next family get together is going to be next month. For you know, we're doing a memorial for a past family member that we do, and I think I'm going to show these guys this movie because they're receptive to this stuff, and they know nothing about it. They know nothing about its initial critical reception. I really would be curious to see what they think of this movie. This was again a gem, and I think everyone that has piled on is really missing the point.
Yeah, what do you think why do they name it Belly? Is this like the belly of the beast or something like that?
This is a good question, and my plan was to look up why this movie is called Belly before we did this, and then I completely forgot. But actually, let's ask. Let's see. Why is the movie Belly? Here we go. Wow, it's actually okay. Why is Belly titled Belly? Belly of the Beast. It's exactly what you said, man.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The characters of Tommy Buns and Sincere are in the belly of the beast of the gangster life,
which the crime life. Yeah,
makes total sense.
Yeah, they're ingrained in that life, and you know, but they seem like they want to get out. You know, and
it's
right?
No, I mean definitely. I think that, and that's the other thing too, is the criticisms of the acting in this film. Again, I think I fall flat. I don't think they hold anyone. There's one performance in this film that if I could have recast, I would. But it's none of the main cast. It comes up at the end, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I think another reason why the criticism of the acting being bad is untrue. It's just because if you watch it, just if you actually watch this film and none of it is unbelievable. DMX and Nas, Hicks and T-Boz, Method Man, like, you know, even the minor characters, like shit. When Sincere goes back to the projects and he's talking to that young kid, who literally he's got a chain, he's strapped. I mean, the kid looks 11 years old. Yeah. Even that kid is completely believable. You know, I had friends that grew up in the Robert Taylor homes. I had friends that grew up in Cabrini Green in Chicago. So it's, again, I would be very, very curious to know if these initial reviewers, one, do you watch hip hop videos? Do you listen to hip hop music? Do you in any way interface in this part of Black culture? Not to say that it's all Black culture, but do you interface in any of these arenas, in any of these areas, in any of these arts? Because if you don't, you might be lost on some of this stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was part of the negative reviews. But with the acting, again, even the kids were believable. The arc that both Nas and DMX go through, you see the changes happening. You know, there's a testament of an actor's skill is their ability to tell a story, to convey what's going on inside them without words. And there are so many instances where both Nas and DMX and, you know, the other characters do exactly that. And again, I don't know what people are looking for in this film because it's all there. And again, I'll go to the mat. In terms of if I have to concede a weakness in the film, and again, not meaning to spoil it for anyone, but I won't tell you exactly what is going on. But there's a character at the end, the minister. So part of DMX's arc is he eventually reforms, becomes a Muslim, and there's interaction with a minister towards the end of the film, and I won't say exactly what it is. I'm going to try to this one time save spoilers, because I hope you guys will watch this movie and then go to Rotten Tomatoes and tell people how wrong they are that it's and that it is a great film. But the character of the minister, I think, really deserved a stronger actor than what this film got.
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of surprises me. I mean, it's serviceable, but as someone, I think about who the absolute titan black actors of the time. I think of there's one of our prides of Chicago.
Wesley Snipes.
Not well. I mean, hang on a second. I'm blanking. This is terrible. This guy's one of my favorites. Hang on. Cast. Here we okay. And again, it is a movie that was a first time directing opportunity for someone who had only done hip hop videos,
right?
Acting for two rappers. So maybe it went. Maybe they couldn't get. But I feel like if they had gotten someone like Chicago's very own Harry Lennox, who has been around forever. He played Aaron the Moor in the feature film version of Titus, which is Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, starring Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Lange, and the great Harry Lennox as Aaron the Moor. If you would have had someone like him, if you would have had someone like, I mean, even, because he was younger back then, but even someone like Jeffrey Wright, who is finally getting his flowers. I think he's one of the best actors that this country has ever produced. Him and Giancarlo Esposito, who played he's in everything, but he was Gus in Breaking Bad. Just incredible.
Right. Oh, he's good, dude.
Just amazing. But you need somebody of that prowess, of that caliber, I think, in the role of that minister. And maybe I thought about it this way. Maybe the role of the minister was to be more gentle and more fatherly in that scene, because it's a rather tense scene. Again, trying to dance around it, trying not to spoil it for you guys.
Yeah.
But I could see that maybe it being that way as opposed to it being very stoic and regal, because of the situation. But if I have to concede a weakness in the film, I would say I was not as satisfied by the acting, by the actor who plays the minister towards the end of the film as I would have liked, knowing the absolute goldmine of African-American acting talent in the greater New York, New Jersey area. Not only, not only now, but at that time, the absolute dearth of great acting that I know occurred there. So I don't know, it was because, again, that's the other thing is Hype knows what he's doing in this film. He knows, he handpicked every actor, every shot, every bit of composition, how things were lit. To your point, the use of color in every single scene was so surgical that maybe I need to reevaluate my criticism of the minister, of the acting of the minister. But that's the only thing that really, if I have to, everybody else, to that guy who's the Fed informant, to, again, the women in the film, that, what's interesting, again, Terrell Hicks and T-Boz really, to me, in Belly, have the feel of Shakespearean women. And what I mean by that is Shakespeare, he's known for writing really strong female characters. It's, there's always, there's obviously in Hamlet you have Ophelia, and Ophelia is kind of, she's really going through it, but she's kind of the exception to Shakespeare's women, and just the strength and the power of Terrell Hicks and of T-Boz in this film. It's in so many ways they're further ahead of DMX and Nas's character in terms of, you know what I mean? Like it's one
Yeah.
of those, you know, if either one of these guys had sort of stepped outside of themselves for just a minute and listened to their women, you know, things, you know, I mean, well, one, there wouldn't have been a movie. So, you know, we need that narrative, we need that arc, we need the conflict. But as as characters, these guys could have solved a lot of their problems by listening to their women straight off. And so that's also for a genre of music as hip hop is, that does get a lot of flack for its portrayal of women. And there's a lot of objectifying of women in hip hop. Of course there is, but just because a woman is beautiful, scantily clad, does not mean she's weak. And these women, these women are fucking badasses. I'm sorry.
They are, man. And
You know?
look, man, the whole thing was only 90 minutes long, you know, and they were able to tell the whole story and get the arcs in. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is that as artists, we always have something to critique. I bet Hype would even have something that he would critique. I'm sure he would have a multitude of things. But I'm as optimistic as you are about the film. Other than what you said, your critique, my only other critique would be, I would have liked to see a little bit more of DMX in his transition to Islam, and because if you're in jail for just like a couple weeks, it's a little unbelievable that you would suddenly just go to Islam. Like, I'd like to see a little more of the process, and like, you know, that's one of those things that takes a lot longer sometimes. But
well,
whatever.
That's a fair. I think that's a. Here's the thing. I'll agree with you that I would have liked to see more. If there's. Well, here's the thing. It's a 90-minute film, which is amazing because they cover so much.
Yeah,
like
right.
they literally, we start with a flashback of him as a kid to boom, they're in the club, boom, things pop off, you know, and then we're off to the races and we're going through their sort of gangster careers. You know, we see the arc and all that, and we get to the end. It feels way longer than 90 minutes in a good way. You know, I've watched movies that are 2.5 hours and my eyes are bleeding. I'm like, I need something to happen. Whereas with this film, it's a tight 90 minutes. There's no time wasted. But no, you're right. I think I would have liked to have seen a little more time of DMX on the inside. See his, again, you know, we don't need, you know, a whole hour of him and his conversion to Islam, but seeing the sort of things turn. And I would say my response to that criticism, because I have to agree with you. I agree. I would like to have seen more of his time inside, and we see that change because when we meet him again, when Tommy and Sincere meet each other again in that restaurant,
right?
There's like a physical change in DMX, and that's another thing. People saying these aren't good actors. I mean, it's not just that he's got glasses on, but there's how he holds himself is different. Like there's a dignity and a quiet strength versus what this sort of ungrounded, bombastic sort of masculinity that he has in the beginning. So again, the acting criticism I don't think is fair. I would like to have seen more of him on the inside, because by that point, like even before then, you do see him realizing this is not working.
Right.
You know, it's like the feds are everywhere. I can't, like, is this really what I want? And I think that's probably why, I would assume why Hype Williams didn't give us like that time on the inside, because you see the rise and then you see the fall and then it goes away. Yeah. And you've got that time with Nas and his wife and their kid, and then bam, then DMX pops back. So I don't think it's a problem in terms of the story, but any extra time I could have got with these guys, with these characters, would have been great. Like, this is a 90-minute movie. I would have watched 3 hours of this shit. Like, if seeing what these guys can do, this entire production of folks could do in 90 minutes. Yeah, I would love for there to be, like, you know, someday somebody says, oh, by the way, there's a 3-hour director's cut that Hype decided he wanted to release, I'd be ready. But no,
Yeah,
I think that
me too.
more of that time with the characters for sure, more of these beautiful compositions, more of this incredible cinematography, absolutely more of the aesthetics of this film are just so top notch. If I can get more of that, I would. But yeah, I don't think it hurts. I still think his conversion and his sort of getting it together is believable. But you're right. I think that it not seeing it doesn't hurt the film, but appreciating the film, yeah, man, if you can give me like, even if I got like, we got 10 minutes of him going in and getting processed, and even if it was sort of like a montage of scenes of him being approached by, say, an elder who's on the inside, and him presenting him with the Quran and saying, man, you need to get yourself together. There's a better way, da 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 da. Yeah, it would not have hurt. It would not have hurt it. It would have.
I think it would have more than not have hurt. I think it really would have helped. But I know what you're saying.
It would punctuate. It would punctuate that.
It would punctuate. Yeah, it would punctuate. Yeah.
No, I think that's a fair criticism. I think overall, I think this is just one of those films that people decided to pile on because they presumed that a hip hop video director and 2 rappers couldn't possibly make a compelling story or a compelling film. And I think they're dead wrong. But no, that's a fair criticism, man.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I think if people found out that, hey, look, this is this dude's first film he's ever directed, and maybe that would have changed that. I bet you a lot of those reviews were white people. Let's be real.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course.
Probably most of them.
How many prominent non-white movie critics were there in 1998? You know what I mean?
Not many.
No, I mean, and this is no, and this is the beauty of the age that we're in. That we, I mean, this movie was made in '98, so 4 years from now, this movie,
25, 30 years old. Yeah,
this movie will be 30 years old.
Yeah, wow.
The beauty of us, for as I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of is streaming good or bad, but the fact that these movies can be piped everywhere and we can rewatch them and we can see them with new eyes and critically reevaluate them, as I think this movie deserves. There's room for us to, I think, give these films their due when they came up in a time when clearly either people just could not appreciate them or were hell bent on not appreciating them. Yeah. And I love the fact that we can rewatch these movies and appreciate them because, this movie's getting a raw deal, and this should, I think, even if, like per your point, even if we're going to say, well, it's his first movie, it's like, well, lots of people have great first movies, and again,
that's true.
And again,
yeah.
Again, I'm trying to think of. I can't think of anyone else who came out of directing music videos.
Yeah.
And turned around and made a profitable feature film besides Hype Williams. I mean, if assuming, even if this $9.6 million box office, let's say that was all of it. Let's say that include domestic, international, and DVD sales, which I don't believe that it does. There's no way. This movie was huge when it came out. It has a cult following among hip hop fans, and I think anybody who's just being intellectually honest, like maybe you don't like gangster movies, maybe you aren't into hip hop, but it's still a beautifully shot film, and you have to give it that. I still think this is an absolute home run of a feature film directorial debut by Hype Williams, even for your criticism. In my criticism of what we're willing to admit were critiques, it still doesn't detract from the overall greatness of the piece, in my opinion.
No, yeah, you just put it really well, man. That's kind of how I feel about it. So, sorry, go ahead.
No. You sorry.
No, I was gonna say, what we usually do in cult of film is get to the best thing to pair it to, and
Yes.
I thought we
Yeah.
could get on with that.
Absolutely, man.
You know, why don't you go first so I can ponder a little bit more?
Okay. Yeah, well, what pops up immediately for me, because I you know, again, I made a pretty bold claim for this movie that it does deserve to occupy the same space as Scarface,
Yeah, you
and
did. Yeah.
I absolutely do, because Scarface is actually another one of those films. Massive, massive fan following, massive cult following, but there are criticisms of it, that I think that, like, Scarface, it's interesting. When it came out, beloved, there seemed to be a period of time in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was almost derided as a cheesy movie and not good. And how did Pacino do this? And then it came around again and it kind of got reappraised again. It's like, no, this is absolutely a classic of gangster films. It's a great piece of 80s cinema, a time when you really couldn't take risks like this, when everything, you know, when the summer movie blockbuster really became a thing, when things became more family friendly, when Hollywood film became more corporate. You have movies like Scarface that really stand out. I think Belly fits there. But I also think, in that vein of great underrated gangster films, if I was going to program a double feature with Belly, the other one would be King of New York with Christopher Walken and Lawrence Fishburne from 1990.
Nice.
Wesley Snipes. It's Christopher Walken, Wesley Snipes, Lawrence Fishburne, David Caruso. This is another. I love this movie, man. King of New York is I think that'd be a great
good pick. Good pick, man. Damn.
You know,
well,
Moody,
you know, that's awesome, dude. That what I was gonna pick was because I was really just I don't know why, but I guess we were talking about him being in jail and Islam and this and that. I would say I would pair it with like Malcolm X. Something like that nature, you know.
Well, you know, I love that.
I don't know why. Do you dig that though?
Well, actually, you know what? I do, and here's why. Malcolm X is one of my favorite Spike Lee films. Malcolm X is a beautifully shot film. I remember being a kid when that movie came out, and that movie causing such kind of an explosion of overreaction on the part of white people. And if you really, if you sit down and watch it, again, Spike Lee, he's another master filmmaker. He's one of my favorites. I love his stuff. I think Malcolm X works. I think that the scope of Malcolm X is sort of like a grand epic, because I think it's like 3 hours and 21 minutes. It's a long film. It doesn't feel long to me. I know people that have watched it and you know, they see the runtime and it's intimidating to them. But if there's not a single lull in that 3 hours and 21 minutes. Every single minute, every frame of that movie is deliberate. It's a great film. It's also very aesthetic from the point that movie starts. You see Malcolm in, what is it, the 20s or the 30s, and he's got his, or maybe it was the 30s and 40s.
It was the 40s, yeah.
40s of him in his zoot suit. Like he's got a red pinstripe zoot suit.
Yeah.
It pops in off of the screen. The use of color, obviously, because it's a movie full of black people, it's a black story. There is great care taken to the aesthetic and the style of these communities, obviously, because it's Spike Lee doing it. So when you have the right people with the right lens behind the camera, they can best present that aesthetic that is theirs in the best possible light. It's again another film where you can hit pause anytime.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
Yeah, and you get to see like an arc, you know, you get to see the character really change. I mean, it's the same sort of thing. Malcolm X, you know, he was into illegal activities before he became who he was and converted to Islam. And
He's a
these
fascinating.
guys had that same arc. It was just not as
Yeah,
big.
the scope of the change obviously is shorter and more condensed in Belly, because it's sort of like, and then because like Malcolm X it's a grand epic in the tradition of like a Lawrence of Arabia, of Citizen Kane. I really do put it in that class of film, just in terms of the grand narrative in this arc. And yeah, with Malcolm, it's again, so much of Malcolm's life was a redemption story, a guy who was striving to be better, to strive for a better world. And just you get all the way to him going to Mecca and his realizations there. And again, even if you have disagreements about his earlier life, even his time with the Nation of Islam, and then his coming to Islam. If you're just watching it with I think an active mind, and you're just absorbing a great film, you should be able to enjoy it. And I think that's a really bold recommendation, because while obviously radically different run times, but the aesthetics pop in both films. They're both really compelling. Again, very different genre. One is a sort of a more crime gritty drama, slice of life. The other is sort of a grand epic of a major historical figure. But the aesthetics and just the overall
intensity also.
Oh yeah, the intensity is
just the intensity of it, and how it just like flows right through the whole thing, even though it's 3.5 hours.
No, and that's you picked one of my favorites. I love Malcolm. It's a really, really great film, and I was thinking along the lines of the crime gangster drama, but no, that's another. You know what would be another good one?
Yeah.
There, in addition to King of New York, Malcolm X, I think a lot of the work by there's Melvin Van Peebles. I went down a rabbit hole. He has a great programming block on Criterion Channel. And for those of you that aren't subscribed to Criterion Channel and you call yourself a film person, you need to correct that, because there's all these directors that have these programming blocks on Criterion Channel. And I watched all of Melvin Van Peebles is Mario Van Peebles' father. He is a really prolific filmmaker. That he did smaller films in black and white, like in the 50s and 60s, and his breakout was a movie called The Watermelon Man, which I think could maybe pair well also with very different movie from Belly, but has a real strong commentary. Watermelon Man is a film about a white man who turns black. Who turns black. But it's played by a black actor, if that makes sense.
Ooh, wow.
It's a really, oh God.
Damn.
This movie's amazing. Hang on, let me put Watermelon Man.
But what the heck was the makeup like on that? That must have been.
Yeah, so it's actually streaming free on our favorite streamer, Tubi.
Yeah.
And it's an American comedy film directed by Melvin Van Peebles, starring Godfrey Cambridge. And the plot is Jeff Gerber lives in an average suburban neighborhood with his seemingly liberal housewife, Althea, who tolerates her husband's character flaws out of love. Every morning when Jeff wakes up, he spends some time under a tanning machine, hitting the speed bag, drinking a health drink, and then races to the bus to get to work. One morning, Jeff wakes up to find that his pigment has changed. He tries to fall back asleep thinking that it's a dream, to no avail, wakes up, goes to a shower, realizes that he's black. So he is, and at this point, so basically, and then he tries to use makeup to be a believable white guy.
Wow, dude.
So it's a black man, a black actor in whiteface playing a white man who then, through some type of an accident with a tanning machine, becomes a black man and then has to recover himself. It is a really
that sounds awesome.
It's so good. It was a major studio release from it was a studio release. He had Melvin Ben Peoples had like a 3-picture deal with, I don't know if it was Paramount or United, because this fucking page on Wikipedia doesn't tell me. I don't know why. I'm sorry, Columbia Pictures. And we'll wrap this up here. But anything from Melvin Ben Peoples, from Watermelon Man to his follow-up, which was a non-studio film called Sweetback's Badass Song, which everyone should see. It's a really, Jesus, this guy had real balls to make a movie like this. I won't say anything more than that, other than the first 5 minutes of this film, I turned it off the first time. I'm like, what am I watching? And I like had to come back to it several times. And then once I watched the whole thing, I was blown away. It's an absolute classic. But in any case, watch Belly, watch Kings of New York, Malcolm X. Yep. Check out Watermelon Man and Sweetback's Badass Song. I'd really love to see what you think of Sweetback's Badass Song if you decide to ever watch it, man, because it, like, I can watch anything. And again, the first 5 minutes of that movie, woo, rock me back on my heels, man. Wow. But yeah, guys,
it's crazy, man. I want to watch Watermelon Man though, because that plot you just said sounds awesome.
Dude. I mean, the fact that movie came out in 1970 when it did, like the courage on the part of Ben Peoples, of Godfrey Cambridge, of the studio that produced it, Columbia, man, they were taking some major risks there. But good stuff, really good stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We love doing this, and
please like, subscribe, share, comment, tell us what to watch next, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.
Take it easy, guys.